Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome. I know that most of you didn't see this conversation, of course, on the schedule. And that's because it was designed initially to be a deal room conversation or a deal room experience until it became very apparent following the numerous conversations that were happening yesterday that for lack of a better term, it needed to be more than just a series of, maybe one may call it isolated conversations, and rather needed to be a roundtable discussion or a panel discussion. So allow me, first of all, to ask each of you, perhaps the simple question, maybe not so simple, but when you think of challenges SMEs and SMIs face, what comes to mind? Joe, maybe we start off with you. The concept of SMEs and SMIs facing challenges. What comes to mind, Joe?
Good day, everybody, and thank you for the question. When you talk about SME, you talk about the engine house, the main nerve center of the economy of any country. And unfortunately for West Africa, it seems as if we are at the tail end. We are the last in the entire African continent and the world. And the challenges are too much. There are too many. So until we have a very, very serious and deliberate effort to change the narratives in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of access to finance, in terms of critical infrastructure that is required to drive quality products, and in terms of good consumer education, because we need to buy what we produce. And because when we buy what we produce, we create that confidence for outsiders to come and buy, and then attract the foreign investors. Because the space in West Africa, for instance, we have too many opportunities in West Africa, but too much poverty. So it's a paradox. You ask yourself why? Because we are not addressing the main issues. Even educational-wise, the universities are not teaching our people what they should learn. In this century, people should go to school to go and learn some social science studies that you wonder, what are you waiting 4 years for? So we have to go to vocational training, skill acquisition, and all that. So SME is the main, control about 80 to 90% of the GDP of any country. So we don't have to play with SME.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Simone, we're talking about challenges. Maybe you can tell us, one or two challenges. If you haven't experienced, perhaps you see the industry experiencing over and over again. Simone.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the questions. I will be speaking French. Thank you for the invitation. For me, there is the opportunity to talk about what we face as challenge in dealing with the SME SMIs. We, as a government support agency, we work hand in hand with the agencies to actually face the challenges that they meet. So our mission, our existence, our business that we focus on is to help SME SMIs to actually scale up. The SME SMI, as we know, is, as the previous speaker said, is the engine of business. And a lot of countries have focused on that target as engine for the creation of job and the creation of wealth. So precisely, we realize that there is an imbalance between the challenges the SMIs face and the agencies that are there to help them. So we step in to actually address the solutions that these entities face. So among these challenges is the ability of the SMEs to set up, to be sustainable, and be productive in terms of staying within time. So the challenge, is SME and SMIs today can be summed up into categories. The first relates to all that has got to do with the technical and managerial aspect, because from the little experience that I have in SME support, it's not the entrepreneur that wants something. It's a meticulous work. So we said there's need to create jobs, there's need to set up enterprises, but there is no school where you learn to become an entrepreneur. There's a lot of school where you learn to become an employee. So the entrepreneur, the project person or promoter must know that it is a long and hard-work road or journey. The entrepreneur must build capacities that enable him or her to overcome that challenge. It is the first capital. It's not the financial resources, it's not the funds that we made available to you, but it's you yourself. Your challenge, your ability to have surmount those challenges is not going to be a flowing river. How do we get to understand that the entrepreneur has the profile required to surmount such difficulty? Is the first challenge. And the second would come in the support he needs to go to the market to acquire the machineries and all sort of difficulties.
Benedicta, then I move
from what Simone has just contributed to perhaps regulatory complexities. You don't go to school to learn how to
manage an SME or to manage an SMI. You perhaps get into it naturally or organically. And then you're faced with so many regulations, particularly now that we're talking on a regional level. How do these regulatory complexities remove perhaps opportunity away from SMEs and SMIs, in your opinion?
I think that, first of all, I'd like to thank EBID for putting in this panel, because it's important that as a continent and as a sub-region, we recognize that the discussions around SME is what would actually transform. SMEs are the types of organizations that will transform this continent. And so we have to think about the discussions we have about SMEs with a strategic view of seeing how, as institutions or as governments, we need to work and plan around them to empower them to be able to transform this continent to become the continent of prosperity and development that we are all talking about, or that we are all looking to see in the coming years. Now, if you talk about regulatory environment, yes, there's an important need for ensuring an enabling environment for businesses. But let's ask ourselves, what are our government's view of SMEs? What have we seen our governments take as initiatives for SMEs in different sectors? So we have about 80 to 90% of our companies being SMEs, and they are actually driving the growth of our individual countries. But SME conversations are had in isolation. They are had as though those conversations would self-correct the challenges we face. But we must begin to see a much more concerted approach when we are talking about how we build a strong ecosystem to drive entrepreneurship on the continent, to drive and empower entrepreneurs. Because yes, we do not go to school to necessarily undertake courses in entrepreneurship, but our governments must begin to realize that since governments only absorb about less than 10% of the workforce, since we do not have the private sector currently being able to absorb the almost 12 million youth that are churned out in our educational systems currently on an annual basis, government must begin to put in place policies that would ensure that we are able to empower young people to go into entrepreneurship. Now, that sort of policy framework would need to take into account not just empowering and giving capacity to our young people in the universities, but also looking at a holistic approach of empowering these young businesses to actually thrive and grow. Day in, day out, we hear our colleagues, we are starting this business, we are starting that. We keep registering companies, we have brilliant ideas. However, ask them 5 years down the line, most of our SMEs are closing down. And a lot of the factors that have been narrated by previous speakers, whether it's the challenges with financing, whether it is the lack of managerial capacity, all account for our companies or our SMEs not being able to thrive. And so as government or as a sub-region that is looking to transform itself from being one that is dependent on the West to give us funding, we want to see that maybe an SME that is launched this year, 20 years down the line, would be investing in EBID. We want to see that our financial institutions are putting in place the right policies to empower and enable our private sector, our SMEs, to grow. And also ensuring that, yes, through some guarantees and measures, we can sort of have a regulatory environment that enables and not one that restricts. Because currently, if you study a lot of the regulatory frameworks for business setups, and particularly young businesses across the country, whether it's Francophone Africa or Anglophone Africa or our Portuguese-speaking colleagues, it is restrictive. It actually prevents you from wanting to be an entrepreneur in any sector. And so we must begin to re-evaluate our regulatory frameworks to ensure that they become the enabling tools to actually drive the entrepreneurship that we need. Because as has been said, without entrepreneurship, without empowering SMEs, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement would fail. Without supporting SMEs, we cannot come out of this lack of economic development that we are seeing on the continent. And so we must see development of SMEs and supporting of SMEs as the critical pillar that would actually lead the continent out of our current state and make it a prosperous one. Thank you.
Belinda, thank you so much. Yes, a round of applause for that. I mean, we talk about, and Humphrey, I'm coming to you with this one. We talk about the lack of experience, the lack of education that can prepare a founder of an SME or a manager of an SME. We talk about the regulatory complexities, etc. Let's talk a little bit about money. Because the bottom line is so many extraordinary ideas, quite a lot of passion, quite a lot of intent, very little investment, if I may say so, without necessarily having the data in front of me. What can we do as SMEs? Well, actually, let's not even talk about solutions. Let's talk about the problem. Why is there so little investment for SMEs and SMIs from how you are seeing it? Humphrey.
Thank you, Anita. First, also thanking the organizers of this forum for making it important for us to have this section, be it impromptu, and I think that shows the dynamism of the organizers. Just like you had mentioned, finance, all the challenges that you have talked about, skills, the legal, where we are, and the rest, all across financing. Because when you want to talk of the legal framework, sometimes you need professionals to help you navigate that, and you need cost. I mean, you need to be able to pay for the cost of a legal consultant, or as the case may be. When we talk of training, even now, yes, there are some business schools, some universities that are now focusing on courses or training for SMEs. Again, you need financing to be able to procure such costs. Then if you are also looking at attracting the right skills or workforce to also join, you also need financing as well. Then talking about why are people not making investment, or why is financial institutions not making investment, it is largely because of how they view the risk. There's no investor or a bank, as the case may be, who is not interested in making investment. They want to make investment and they want returns. And of course, in simple economics, we are told that the higher the risks, the more the returns. But you don't want to forego, or rather you don't want to lose your money with the mind of having higher returns. So you still have to create a balance. And the issue now is, how do we mitigate or at least reduce the risks that are inherent in SME or SMIs, as the case may be. I think that is where the real issue is. And if we want to look at all that, institutions like EBID that would know now, and the banks, especially the local banks. When I say local banks, I mean the commercial banks in each countries or across the region that are not multilateral institutions like the likes of EBID. If we come to EBID now, for instance, the financing acts, the minimum amount that we want to look at, it's nothing less than $5 million or 5 million euros. So anything less is not worth their while. But however, they can channel that resources through a local bank in that jurisdiction that can take that risk, because everybody will be comfortable with the risks of that local bank. But then the local bank in itself has to be comfortable with the SME. And most of the times what you also see is that there are no records. Bookkeeping is a challenge. You know, a situation where you, first again, well, let us now look, how do you classify who's an SME, or which company is an SME, and which differs from countries to country. You know, some will look at the number of employees, others will look at the turnover. And looking at the regional integration that we are looking at, we have different currency. If Nigeria is saying an SME is a company that earns maybe 20 million turnover per annum, Ghana will classify that in cedis, and maybe a figure that when you translate that, it may not necessarily equal to 20 million naira. And EBID, for instance, or other institutions that deal with USD or euro, when you translate that, of course, it's going to be far, far less than the $5 million. So you see that there is no like a unification that you can use, or it's not a one-size-fits-all across the continent or the sub-region, as the case may be. Then if you then also look at staffing, you know, some we are looking at whether it's 10, whether it's a micro or 50 staff or the likes, and most of the time, when those who that require lots of human capital requirement, that require large number of staff, especially for small-scale industries, for instance, where a lot of the activities are generally manual, so you require a lot of manpower. But even at the number of manpower they still have, you still see that management, there's no structure. You know, the management and decision-making resides more or less on one man, who's the founder. And most of the times, they are reluctant to allowing others to join in a decision-making. So they are the alpha, the omega, more or less, as it were. So when you have such, lenders or investors seem to have some kind of phobia to say what happens, because again, we are talking of key man risks, for instance, you know, and because of that, you don't have proper controls on a lot of things. So essentially, these are the key issues. So.
Now, I want to make this conversation as dynamic and engaging as possible. Do I have one or two SMEs or SMIs here to describe a challenge they face? I don't want the solutions yet. I don't want the recommendation. I want a challenge. And so I want to hear your experience. Please, Madam, if you can give in the microphone, your experience, either in line with what has been shared now or perhaps even different. A challenge you have faced, please. Please tell us your name and where you're from, the name of your organization, sir.
My name is Ruben Tamba, and I am a Cameroonian entrepreneur based in Nigeria. I've stayed in Nigeria for 19 years.
Please move the microphone a bit closer so I can hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I would say my name is Ruben Tamba. I am a Cameroonian entrepreneur who has lived in Nigeria for 19 years. I wish to say a big thank you to Madam Simone, who has done a wonderful presentation on what involves SMEs or SMIs on the African continent. Merci, Madame Simone. Je vous félicite parce que
I am commending because you have given the true picture of SMEs in Africa. These are the activities and then the challenges that we as heads of this enterprise meet. Today, we don't want to go into side things that the governments do. Conferences as such have been organized since time immemorial. After this conference, everything ends here. Nothing is left. Nothing is continued. So we, the African youth today, we want to be practical. We want that right after this conference, everything that has been said here should be practiced, put into practice by the Togolese government. It is by doing this that the African entrepreneurship, particularly the younger women that you represent, together, we can say that we can lift this continent to another level. Gentlemen, please, I would like to understand your story. Not the recommendations, but the story, the challenges. Our challenge today relates to the support from agencies like ECOWAS Investment Bank, that must pass or channel funding through standard banks or local banks. These local banks have set up a kind of networks. As once they receive such funding, it is the networks of such people that they channel the financing to actually get the information or the available financing. It's a whole headache. So information regarding the funding does not get to the leaders of the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurships, or those involved in the entrepreneurship. That is why when you said information regarding managerial information must get to the entrepreneur, and this also is a problem. So there is a challenge, an issue of information sharing.
Tule, we are producers of E-Mega fertilizer. We're based in Makurdi, Benin State in Nigeria. Yeah, we produced E-Mega fertilizer. Is a chemical fertilizer and of very high quality. We've been trying to break through at the national level in order to supply fertilizer through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. We virtually met all requirements. Then just this week, there was another list of 10 new regulations. 10 new regulations issued in a memo requiring all companies that wish to do business through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to comply with. And these are certifications, new certifications from different institutions across the country, which you must meet. I think the last thing I would like to comment on would be the issue of funding. And here, I think EBID has a role to play. EBID must include within its structure. It is inconceivable that you would say that the least loan you can give is $5 million. To me, it's totally unacceptable, given the kind of environment in which you operate. You just assume that you downgrade. You create a department for SMEs and microfinance institutions, and you make give them specialist training, make that kind of funds available. You imagine what $1 million can do if we change it to CFA in this economy in Togo, and how many young people can access that kind of funds. So if you are not ready to take any form of risk because you want to be a AAA rated financial institution, then you may be losing a very critical part of your clients, and you may not be fully achieving the purpose for which you were created. So I think that there is need for EBID to create that department for SME and provide specialist training for them in order to meet that niche in financing. Thank you.
This is why I like this conversation, because I do believe that we have some rapporteurs, and the rapporteurs are going to capture what would eventually be recommendations made by the custodians of the industry themselves, as opposed to professionals, so to speak. Thank you very much. One more story, one more example of a challenge you have faced. I don't want solutions, I don't want recommendations yet. I want to hear a challenge, an example of a challenge. The gentleman with, okay, we've got Sue on this side. Very quickly, I'll take those two and then we'll come to possible solutions.
Bonsoir tout le monde.
Good afternoon. I am Eto Jean-Paul. I am an IT developer. I am the co-founder of Start a Club. Clumer is a startup that aims to put technology at the service of event organizers through services like Boyotary, E14, Club 14, and so on. For me, it's been about 7 years that I started an enterprise in Togo. Well, what I noticed is that we say we promote entrepreneurship, but I don't know, I've not seen it. I don't know for Anglophone countries, but the Francophone countries, Togo particularly, entrepreneurship is not promoted. The doors are not open. The gentleman said that quite apart from conferences where opportunities are given for us to talk to government and so on, after that, there is no framework where entrepreneurs could come out and express their needs. Excuse me for the thing. If you have the National Agency for the Promotion of SMEs, if you ask them whether the companies or the companies that they know are the businesses that he can mention, no, there will be companies that have seen it all, but we, the young people, don't know how we can reach out and have access to such milieu. You should be a member, you should belong to some networks before you're able to get some information, get access to them. So the major organization, it's high time they started thinking to the young entrepreneurship, organize events like this. So I'm grateful to EBID for organizing things like this, where we actually come out to lay out or bring to bear our issues, our challenges, because our government, I may say, they are not even aware of our problems. Today, if you ask them, they'll tell you they've done this, they've done that, but we are wondering who are the beneficiaries. And also, lack of information. Well, you know, we talk of EBID, for instance, for this event. I saw it on Twitter and the rest, but I think that banks and major institutions should change their way of communicating. You want to reach out to the youth. It's true, We are young entrepreneurs, we must go for the information, but the standard, the traditional way of communicating is different. Where do you find the youth? You have the digital channels. You need to leverage on the type of communication where you can reach out to us. It is not the type of this information. If you put it into the media, the newspaper, you reach out to these people at 60 years and so on. So use the digital channel to actually reach out to the real youth entrepreneurs. Thank you very much, my brother. The last contribution, please.
My name is Adewumi from Nigeria, and I run a company, Magic One Publishing. We've been around for about 15 years, a little more than 15 years. So what we do basically is we reinvented publishing, where rather than the standard process where you have to do like 1,000 copies of a regular book for an author, you can do at least 50 copies with us. So meaning breaking all the barriers, and we've had people go from 50 to about 10,000 and the rest. So here is the problem. Now, recently we're trying to register in Ghana. It was more like a camel going through the eye of a needle. That it actually, we ended up registering right now, but we had to have a Ghanaian register. Because if you are registering as a foreigner, it's practically a gun to your head. That's in Ghana. Now, I was in Kigali, and in Kigali, they have the business hub, where right in that business hub, there is the customs, there is the standard organization, practically all the agencies within the same building. So I just stood up from this desk to go inquire here, to inquire here, and there is a last door where I will walk into and register the business, and within one day I will walk out with a registered business, even as a foreigner. Now, we're talking ECOWAS, that is East Africa, ready to accept me. Now, we're talking not just the whole registration part, which we've made very difficult as ECOWAS. We also do tourism. Now, I'm ECOWAS, I'm supposed to travel through very easily. But right there at Nigerian border, even as a Nigerian, I get frustrated. Then I get to the Benin side, and they tell me I can't drive through until I pay 2,000 CFA. Then I meet so many points along the way. And so just that I'm carrying a Nigerian passport, I would pay through my nose. And we're talking about ease of business. I've been to Togo every week, the last 3 weekends. I was here last weekend, I was here upper weekend, I was in Ghana, I was practically everywhere, at least within these 3 countries. And it's the same. I pay 3,000 CFA to stamp here, then I pay 2,000 CFA to stamp, then port health, then this, then that. Okay, so as a business, as a young man who wants to visit my partner in Togo, how will that play out?
Which of the partners, business partner or romantic partner?
No. Okay, all sorts of partners, they're all business. But business partner.
Let's be serious.
So the point here is this. So we're talking, funding is great, but some of us are trying to say, okay, let us not look at funding. Let's see how we can make a little money. Let's engage. Because what we do, every time we talk to people, they are interested. We have Nigerians today who offer our service, making about 10 million a year, side also. We know they just front. We are the printer, we own the machines. They're just out there making money. We have about 10, some guys in the UK, some people in the US. Okay, let's do the same in Ghana. They're frustrated, like, no.
Okay,
so
no problem at all.
How do we deal with that?
So how do we deal with that? So we've heard a number of problems, and I really wanted, as this is more or less a round table, an open discussion, listen, what's going to happen is we are going to have very difficult, uncomfortable solutions to find, or uncomfortable conversations to find the solutions, whether we all like it or not, whether we're all online or not. But one thing I do believe is whether we're talking to ECOWAS, whether we're talking to EBID, whether we're talking to IFC, these are the problems that our SMEs and our SMIs are facing. And we have to deal with them, whether we like it or not. Poor man is trying to meet his partner. He still didn't tell me whether it's partnership or whatever. It's not so easy. Somebody is having a problem with information. There is information, doesn't know where to find it. Somebody feels that if you are a certain age, clearly, you are not going to be able to find information where perhaps your age mates are really not going to traditional media. They want to be spoken to via the new media. Somebody's also talking about regulation. That seems to be different from one country to another. So clearly, there is so much going on. So this is an opportune time to now start talking about solutions. There are members of the EBID team here. I won't point them out to you, otherwise you will go chasing after them. But they know who they are, and I'm saying, please let EIF 2024 be the difference. It's what these, entrepreneurs are asking, but we'll come to that. Simone, let's start off with you again. Information, regulation, what else? Communication, Simone. Let's come to solutions from where you sit. What are some of the solutions that we need to be looking at urgently?
Merci.
Thank you. I was expecting this kind of questions, because if I tell you that I am here about 15 years ago in this business, a lot of people will not believe it. So let me take the first question on information. I am going to make a little comparison. When you go to school, for instance, we expect our teachers to provide information on lessons or lectures given. Today, you said it, we are in a more advanced world. You cannot necessarily wait for your lecturer to provide information on lectures to be given you. There are a lot of channels to get to the information you need. The same applies to structures or companies created by the government or ourselves. I would be talking raw practically, because I work more and more with enterprises and the companies or businesses. But if I want to set up a project, or I have conceived a project, the first thing I want to start with is to gather every information in my field. If I say every information, it is how to package the project. That is where everything starts from. The business model, if you take it, it entails every type of information that the entrepreneur does not take the care to properly handle. So when you come down to the bank is faced, or when they come to the bank, they meet some hurdles. Well, the young entrepreneur are not the group that the bank wants to actually handle. The bank wants to lend money in marks to such business, to stay in business. So there is an issue of meeting the demand with the supply. When the two do not go hand in hand, the support cannot actually be there. So there is a work to be done by the entrepreneur, and on the other hand, the financing entities also must do their job. So when I come back to the issue of information, I need to gather the information on the person to whom I'm going to sell my project. It's key for my business. If I don't know my market, how do I make money, since the bayonet of my company is to make money? So I need to know the one who's going to buy my product. I have to know where I'm going to gather my raw materials from. I need to know the company or entity that is there to support me financially. So I need to get out there and chase information. So when you talk of business, I'm going to talk about the youth in bracket. So when you talk of entrepreneurship, I'm talking about my experience. When you put yourself in the shoes of youth, it means that you need to be sustained. You need to be held hand in hand. So the government has that role of playing the well-being of its people. It talks about the youth. It talks about where there are jobs to be provided for. But when you're an entrepreneur, you need to actually get out of your mind that notion or that concept of support and so on. So there are people who are very young, but they make a lot of money, and the major companies that have lived very long or have been in business very long cannot even make the money the little one makes. So the issue of entrepreneurship comes back to the entrepreneur. He must go out there and get the information. Now, you surely are right. The support channels must actually improve their communication. You're spot on. It must be done so that you may not have such challenges going to get information, but I think we will take it on case by case. You need to go and get information because you are dealing with a field where information is key. It is your fuel. So right from the word go, you need to get information. So there is that type of entrepreneurs that go into entrepreneurship because they don't know what to do, or maybe they are looking to how to meet their needs. The entrepreneurship comes from something that you birth. If it's something that you conceive and then carry along some years. Business is not created or nurtured overnight. When I come back to the issue of the support from banks, the gentleman who spoke about the fact that banks do not adequately provide support to entrepreneur. Well, why does the bank support certain category of people or business? Because they give some element that reassure the bank to provide the support. So the entrepreneur must actually get themselves the means to get the required this information that the banks are looking for. It's quite daunting. There is a lot of difficulty, but that is why we, with the support entities, we support the promoter in what has got to do with coaching, that is information to meet banking information. You need to develop your activity or your business. But when the SMEs get to the banks, their first concern is the funds, is the money. So that process of support, they see it as a waste of time. Meanwhile, there is an aspect where you pump in a lot of resources. A bank will not spend time cuddling a business to grow. It's only one business that is subsidized by the government that does that. So it is the government. So I can assure you that the companies, when they get to the banks and you do not talk about funding or money, they are not satisfied. But I can assure you that the issue is that when you start a business, the first credit or money is not from the bank. It must come from own funds or from the support from others that trust you. That is the most difficult one again, because where we meet nowadays, it is difficult for companies to actually pull resources together. So when you look at the profile of foreign companies or foreign businesses that are on their feet, it's not only one founder. Mostly they are co-founders. Please hold on just 1 second. I'm going to ask Joe regarding his experience and I'll get back to you.
Simone has talked about a plethora of clear problems, that probably leads the entrepreneur, the SME, the SMI, to that issue. We talked about information, we talked about communication, but before she gives us her recommendations, Joe, I want to tap into your experience. You've successfully started a palm oil business. It's doing very well. Do any of the challenges that were mentioned, do they resonate with you? And if any of them resonate with you, what did you do to change the course in your personal experience that you can say, this is how I solved this particular problem?
Okay, very good question. You see, the major problem with SMEs in ECOWAS region, I want to make it local, is funding. Funding remains the biggest elephant in the room. And the commercial banks in West Africa cannot help any entrepreneur. Startups, not possible. Because of their policies. This is the only region or continent that where the economy is doing very well, the banks are posting heavy profits. They are parasites. A lot of hidden charges everywhere. Even the established businesses, if you don't have a good auditors, you lose millions to the banks every day without knowing. So the banks are not profiled to provide solutions to businesses in Africa.
Joe, hang on a second. Did you get money from a bank?
I'm coming to that.
You come to that. You tell us a secret. Where you got your money?
No, I'll tell you why. Because you see, when you want to do a startup, the bank says, oh, you know what? You're a startup, we can't deal with you. You have to first have track records, start with your own money, don't come back. But you forget that the idea rules the world. This person may have the best solution that the economy needs, but because of funding, that idea dies with the person. And everybody, most times, people here, they're very poor. So where do you want to go to family and friends to go and get that money? Which property your family have to go and sell property to go and raise that money? It's impossible, right? So even when you have when you go and sell your grandfather's land, borrow money from even the shrines in your village, to go to the bank and bring 20% equity contribution. That's the management fee they charge you. Do they manage your company, the business? No. All they do, you have not been able to meet your obligation. But you see, my goods were trapped in the port, this raw material in the port. It took me 4 months to clear demurrage. They don't want to hear that. But in Europe, they will tell you, you know what? We can see you are having a problem. We'll sit down with you. They do what they call restructuring. Instead of asking you to pay 6 months, because of this problem you have, we give you 1 year, 2 years. Then again, they tell you, you know what, we need to give you more money. So you need additional funding from this one we give, so you can surmount this problem. They spread the interest for you and give you waivers. But here, no.
So what did you do? Where did you get your money?
Okay, what I did was this. Mm-hmm. When I first started, I said, I did a small simulation. She talked about information.
Yeah.
It is very important because this is a true life story. Mm. You go to you call a stakeholders meeting, for instance. I have an oil palm plantation. I'm too small to go to the bank because I have no structure. Then there's somebody who's a big miller. He has the mill. I need my raw material to process. I got to him and said, you know what? You can see I have this plantation. I need 10 million naira to do what you call best management practice, to slash, to prune, and to ringweed my plantation. So I apply fertilizer to get this yield that I need to sell to you. And because the bank cannot give me, why don't you give me 5 million? Don't give me the cash. Tell Dangote to supply me the fertilizer. You pay for it, so they give me the fertilizer. I have my workforce. I apply the fertilizer. I take the money to do slashing. Then when I harvest, the current market price is what we're going to use, by the way. So you deduct that cost. Because I have this obligation that I must sell to you. So I will not sell to your competitors. So being a smart processor, you already know you have the source of raw materials. So with that one, I have my money already. So the money, I have the input that I need. Without any bank charges, and I'm able to apply that judiciously to make sure that I produce. And I said to you, and by the time they deduct, that's all. I don't need to come back to you. So I'm able to, by the time you have that turnover, the banks will start coming to you to say, oh, I can see you are doing work, I give you money now.
So are the banks coming to you now?
Of course they will come because they want to take some money from you, management fee and interest rate. Even when you don't need to know, because they set the turnover. But you see, it needs bank support to build this turnover.
Yeah.
Banks in West Africa only provide funding for traders, not for production. Mm. That's why we have a problem. There are all the raw materials in West Africa. Let me give you an instance, for instance now. Today in my country, we spend $500 million every year to import crude palm oil for the huge demand. People don't know that palm oil is so useful to humans than anything else. When you wake up in the morning, you go to your bathroom, you brush your mouth. Then you go to the shower, you take your shower with soap. You go to your dressing table, you apply your lipstick, you apply your cream. You go to the dining table, you have your mayonnaise, you have your margarine, you have your butter, you have your bread, you have your maybe noodles, you have your fried egg. You'll be using palm oil since without knowing. These are all from palm oil. Palm oil drove European industrial after the abolition of the slave trade. It drove European revolution. And today, West Africa, that palm oil originated from, is now importing palm oil from Southeast Asia. It's a shame. We have the best environment. The banks are not funding that. We don't even have the proper government policies to drive this development. And we sit down and we don't even fund research. For instance, we have the best research institution in Nigeria called the Nigeria Institute for Youth Palm Research. This institution was set up by the British in 1939 as the pioneer research institution for oil palm, because that was the British interest anyway. It was called West African Oil Palm Research Institute. Now, after independence, because Nigeria Oil Palm Institute. In NIFO, in Benin, in Nigeria, if you go to Malaysia, you go to Indonesia, they have the biggest respect for this institution. But here in Africa, in West Africa, we sit back, foreigners come to Nigeria, take this seedling from Nigeria, go to Togo, and bring it back to Nigeria, and call it one funny name. And we pay 3 times for the same thing. That's even inferior because they have tampered with the original gem in their lab and now sell it back to us. We import diseases that are alien to our environment and we're paying double. Meanwhile, the one we have from NIFO has the best stem gel. Thailand is a very small country. Today, they're number 3 in the world. You go there, they have the seedling called Nigerian Black. It's the best. Nigerian Black. But Nigerians are importing from Malaysia and Indonesia without having access to, without knowing what they have in NIFO. So it's a problem.
Yeah.
So we need to fund research.
Okay.
Because as West Africans, we cannot sit down and the SMEs cannot grow without government funding or, okay, thank God we have EBID and African Bank. I'll tell you what, these 2 institutions have, in fact, they've started very well. I'm so impressed. That's why I made effort to come to be here personally, because from what they have done, you can see that we now have our own World Bank and IMF, because the West can never allow us to grow. So these 2 institutions, once they can put their acts together the way they have started, in the next 5 years, we change the whole stories.
Joe, we're going to continue, and I want you and Simone to start thinking about recommendations. I'm going to come to the money man, Humphrey. Joe has talked about how he used probably, if I may call it, a barter trade system to alleviate his issue with money. Humphrey, how do SMEs and SMIs find the money? What's the trick? You're the money man. How do they access this hidden money that is somewhere? It's sitting somewhere. We don't know. What would be the best way, the starting point for them accessing that money wherever it sits?
Thanks, Anita.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, listen, knowledge is power. It's all of those things. And our sister talked about it in terms of searching for information and looking for it. And Joe also did something by partnering with, let me be careful the way I use that word now, partner. But he collaborated with a processor. You know, so you see that such opportunities do exist. It doesn't really have to be cash, as it were. But before I come back to maybe how, I would also want to quickly say something, because it's more or less from what I earlier said. It appears I stole the honest net. And I see my brother from Benue talked about the limit that EBID finances. First, I'm not a staff of EBID, so I may not be in a position to speak for them, but I can just say something around that. Just as the same way Joe has also complained about the banks. All financial institutions or investors, as the case may be, they are set up and they have strategy of what they want to do. EBID, for instance, is a motorized institution set up by various countries, and they have a focus. All they have to do, part of their duties or responsibility, is to create the enabling environment, which is why I said earlier on that one of the things they are doing, and which we have witnessed and participated with, for instance, last year we had helping securing $50 million for Vista Bank, which is one of the banks that had about 4 countries, and the focus was for them to deploy that fund for SME. So that's an enabler. You know, the thing you also have to notice that Vista is not in this country, but those banks are there, so they see they are the ones who can do $1 million, $100,000, or even $50,000, as the case may be. So that is one way you can look at it. The banks themselves, they have investors who they also have to report to, so they need to follow some of those things. Joe was able to crack that because he has created that track record. She said that you don't have to use your first money to start a business from the bank, and that is largely because you can look at other investors that are willing. They are what people call today angel investors or venture capitalists, and the case would be when you are able to provide a compelling business case. But sometimes what we also see people who do not also do research. What we find more or less is the bandwagon effect. Because Anita owns a fashion shop and she appears to be doing very well, then I would say, oh, I think that's where the money is now. I also need to have a fashion business. Or Joe has a palm plantation, I also need to do the same thing. Without really researching to find out how is he doing it. What do I really need to do to start a fashion business or to start processing oil palm and the likes, and they just come and say, this is what. And even when you go to an angel investor or even to a friend that has the money, if it's not comfortable with you, he is not going to put his money down. Maybe you may be able to cajole or use moral suasion or some form of, other ways of getting them to have sympathy. They will, if they're going to give you, if you need 100, they're not going to give you 100. Maybe they give you 5. I know they can part with that. But if they are comfortable, I know that this is going to bring good returns, and you have planned the business properly. I can tell you that from friends and families, funding can come from that source. And then again, my friend there who actually represent the youth. By the way, I'm a youth also. Don't mind my gray hair, right? Day to day, I will say, when we talk of information, they have it at their fingertips. You know, you talk of alternative media, not, it's not traditional, or rather the new media, as you call it. If you go to social media, there are a lot of businesses that are striving there. Sometimes you start from your own house. Just this morning I was having a conversation with my wife who needed to get something. And what she sent to me on my phone, it was from somebody she doesn't know anywhere before, but on Instagram. You know, she just went there and get told this is what, and already, before I knew, they've sealed a deal, right? So you don't have to, because you want to come and say, I need a big shop, I need this, I need this. There are some of those things you can actually do right from your own backyard, and then you have a market already in the social media, because you cannot estimate the reach you can estimate the reach. You can actually be in Lome and actually be conversing with someone in Cape Verde.
Yes.
And once the platform of trust is created, money can exchange hands and goods delivered. That is where we have our government, regional institutions that can then come in. Today we are having likes of Afrezim creating a platform like PAPS for payments. They are creating MASA for identifying or providing credibility for institutions. So you need that. If you don't, then go there and register. If you come to me for financing and I check that you are on that platform, for instance, I have some confidence, but some due diligence has been done on this company, and those institutions, whether they are PE firms or they are venture capitalists, as the case may be, they'll be more comfortable to invest. So let's also then focus on creating that form of track record, not just only in having to do the business for a long time, but in also ensuring that you have a proper plan, you have developed real knowledge in what you need to do, and then look out for various institutions that can provide that. Yeah, for us, for instance, PAC, part of what we do is helping companies, providing advisory service, and directing them to where they can get the financing from, right? But again, in terms of course, there are costs to all that, but the thing is, for us, we are looking for how are we able to support SMEs in a way that it doesn't cost them much. It can even be in the form of providing knowledge as a form of a CSR, as the case may be. We can put them together in a room, like in collaboration with what EBID or other institutions are doing on local banks. You come together and point them in the right direction, and that in that way they can have that exposure that is required. So please, let's also then look, not just look at the banks to say they have an obligation to give you money, but you can also see them as creating the platforms. And we need the government. The banks, for instance, are regulated. If a bank needs to give you funding, they have a check list. They have boxes they need to tick. They will not give you money because your business is going to return 100% or 1,000, and at the end they are in foul of their regulation, of their own regulator. You know, they will be sanctioned, and whatever they are going to earn from you, they can pay multiple times that. So why would they take that risk? If the regulations say they must get a collateral, they have to get a collateral, right? But then you now have to think, what other solutions do you have, like Drew had done? Or can you collaborate? You may also, instead of going to your friend to say, give me cash, perhaps there's some knowledge that he has. Okay, can you help me with this? You know, and sometimes people talk to me and said, okay, this is what you need to do, or you can talk to these people and they are able to help you. It might also be to say, okay, are you able to leverage an asset that the person has? You know, there are third parties, institutions that provide third-party collaterals, and they can provide for you together. But again, the key word is you have to have done your own background check and make them comfortable.
I'm going to come to the audience for one or two recommendations. If you were the bank or if you were the regulatory body, what your recommendation would be. But before then, Benedicta, your experience in law is what I want to tap into right now, because Humphrey has talked about the necessity to go and look for information. What is also the necessity to pay attention to the legal frameworks about how your business is set up, or what kind of opportunities there are that your business can tap into. And if those opportunities are there, as you can share with us, what must we pay attention to as small-scale enterprises and small-scale industry founders or CEOs, etc.?
I think when it comes to information, yes, sometimes we do not know that certain policies or laws exist to support us in our business endeavors. But I think what we should actually focus on is asking ourselves whether the very laws that were put in place to facilitate our businesses, our cross-border trading, are being adhered to, whether the ECOWAS protocols, whether the African Continental Free Trade Agreements are being observed by the very states that signed on to them. When you also look at the country levels, yes, there are laws that sit on books, but those laws, until we actually begin to ensure that implementation is effective, it will not inure to the benefit of an SME. Now, for me, as a legal person or as somebody with a legal background, when I look at these laws, it is not to look at them in a restrictive manner, but rather ask ourselves, how can we ensure or how can we advocate for our governments, for our institutions, to actually take steps that translate those regulations into policies that benefit us. Yes, we are young people. I can say that we are probably the most privileged young people ECOWAS has currently, because we have an education, because we can access the internet. We have colleagues who are in the rural areas who do not even have access to electricity, let alone talk about a phone that has internet access. And so we sit in a privileged position, and we owe it a responsibility to ourselves, but to other young people who are saying our system is broken. People who have said that, yes, over the years we've done things this way, but we have not been able to change or improve significantly on our condition. How do we say that today, as we are having the ECOWAS Investment Forum, how do we start this journey to say, yes, we've done things the same way for a number of decades, but now we are moving to a decade of action, a decade that would ensure that not just the people, but our institutions are pushed to have a revolutionary mindset. We know that the ECOWAS Bank is our bank, Mr. President. It is our bank as citizens of ECOWAS. We know that we have governments that we voted into power. Their responsibility is to enable us succeed, to create the right frameworks and policies to ensure that we succeed. But when we are seeing that our banks are restricting us, restricting our access to finance, I think it is about time we begin to call on our banks, to begin to call on our governments, to actually change the very regulatory frameworks that we've kept on our books up to this point. We look at Ghana, where I come from, and Singapore. At the time of our independence, we had the same size of economy. 50, almost 60 years down the line, we cannot say that. My colleague panelists mentioned the story about palm wine, palm oil, and Nigeria's story, West Africa's story. How do we move beyond just talking about the problem to actually finding plausible solutions? We must call on our leaders and our institutions to begin to prioritize our development in a much, much more strategic way. We've seen India Exim Bank here. We've seen Saudi Exim Bank. The way they operate is that they actually pick winners. They support businesses. They identify businesses and empower them. They know that they have, let's say, a strategic vision of transforming economies or their sub-regions over a period of 30 years. And they actually take the steps that needs to be taken. Yes, I can start a business and actually call on my family members. But what if my family members do not have the money? So yes, as a young person who has completed the university, I cannot get a formal job. And so I say that I'm going to start a business. So I'm starting a business out of necessity and not because I have an inherent desire to be an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurship is now befalling on us as a survival mechanism. And yet still, the system is not enabling me for me to be able to succeed at being a young entrepreneur who is not just working to create jobs for myself, but for my other colleagues. And so this is why we must think about the current challenge we have in a much more strategic way, and not just leaving the question to individuals or individual banks or individual border officers. We must think of it as a collective, as ECOWAS, as ECOWAS Investment Bank saying, you know what, we are the development bank for this region. Our focus is development. Now, how do we ensure that in the next 10 years, we can boast of a much more significant economic expansion of the countries that are in our sub-region? How do we sit with our governments to say, let us begin to prioritize industrialization, let us begin to prioritize SME development? Yes, we have all the trade protocols, but we are facing challenges when it comes to our land borders. How do we move from the consistent complaining of the challenges we have to actually finding a solution that works for our people? Now, we are happy that EBID is starting this, but we must see that even within our countries, our central banks are regulating our commercial banks in such a way that they are not just giving them incentives for supporting SMEs, but they are actually requiring commercial banks to prioritize SME funding. I think that if our central banks can actually take on board this responsibility of financing or facilitating the financing of SMEs as being the financing of our development, I think we wouldn't be back here 10 years from now still talking and complaining about the same challenges.
All right, all right, all right. Mr. President, this is big for us, it's huge for us. My dear friend Joseph sent me these issues, and I have to read them out. Today, what I've heard is some of the issues are regulatory challenges, commercial banks lending to friends, not new clients, problem with finance, lack of general support to SMEs, information asymmetry, idiosyncratic business registration processes. Oh, Joseph, why did you have to worry me like this? And too many physical barriers. So it's too late for Mr. President, my dear big brother, Dr. Donko, to fire me. So I'm going to use this opportunity rather to challenge him. So we've almost come to a very important conversation, and I wonder if, God willing, between now and when we meet again, some of these issues on behalf of our friends in the SME space or the SMI space are looked at, so that when we meet again for EIF 2025, EBID can boast of some actions that were taken. Is everybody supporting me on this? Guys, if you don't support me, I have to go back to Ghana today. Are you supporting me on this? And I think my president is a good president. He's a listening president, and I'm so happy he sat through this conversation to listen. And it's almost like the voice of the youth, almost. Mr. President, say something to us, please. I know I'm putting you on the spot with respect.
Thank you very much, Anita.
Yes, sir.
I think let me put it, in context. As a DFI, as a regional financial institution, we have over the years, committed ourselves to ensuring that we pay attention to SMEs and SMIs. In fact, about 60% of our portfolio currently is committed to SMEs and SMI. The reason you don't see us directly is that we have a model, what we call indirect financing. By this, what I mean is that we extend lines of credit to all the commercial banks within our catchment areas for on-lending to the SMEs and SMIs. The reason is that we are too big, with all respect for the SMEs. Our minimum lending, as we speak now, is almost $10 million. which is too much for the SMEs. So what we do is that we extend the lines of credit to the commercial banks in all the 15 countries. And then they will also on-lend to the SMEs. Of course, they know them better than we know them. And so the idea is to make sure that the monies that we give out are, are used or applied for the purpose for which they were, they were given out. And that's why we don't go directly to the SMEs. But I can assure you that about 60% of our total portfolio now, 500 million over, is committed to SMEs and SMIs.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, because the world is watching us now, and because I've been boasting of your exemplary leadership, may we, with respect and humility, ask that you go ahead of us to plead with the commercial banks to be a little bit more lenient. May we, you don't have to promise us, you just have to give us a thumbs up that you will try.
I will do that.
Yes, sir.
I will do that.
Thank you very much. You see, this is why this forum was created. My brother, I can see your hand up. Do you want to give a recommendation? I can take one. Dr. Kala, just one moment. There was somebody behind you. I have only 2 more minutes. Do you want to give a recommendation? I'm only taking recommendations. The microphone is gone.
Please, not
yes,
a recommendation.
Yes, sir.
It's a challenge I want to share with you as banker.
Okay, good.
J'irai.
I am going to speak French. We have gathered the challenges of those who actually qualify, but the bankers are not here. They shouldn't be left out. They should be here to engage and to raise issues. Please, I would like to talk about one thing as a challenge that we need to brainstorm about and then come up with recommendations with. A lot of things have been said here. However, there are some regulatory aspects. I would like to talk of the prudential regulatory. You know, development banks grant lines. It's true, like Madam Simone said, that are used. No banks does selection. We fund everybody. We do not discriminate. But the prudential recommendation is so strict from the 1st January 2028. It is so strict that when the banking commission inspectors visit banks, these are people who do their job and they do it very well. But sometimes, let me tell you, sometimes they do it very roughly. Let me use the word rough, very rudimentary. One of the panelists said that in Europe, credit has restructured over 12 months. In UOMOA, it is not easily feasible. You cannot do that. Even if you are financing a SME that is at the startup phase, or there is a period of a grace period, and if the bank decides to extend, it's not easy. After extension, that loan is classified as doubtful loan. So if there's only one maturity that's not paid, the client becomes a defaulter, becomes a bad client. So there is that regulatory aspect that you must take into account. Second thing is that the legal aspect that makes this complex. The WADA laws overprotect the debtor. It is easy to say, but if a tomato spoils the basket, the entire basket can be considered as bad. So these are aspects that we need to consider so that the regulatory body should see to actually make the funding of SMEs easier. Otherwise, a lot of recommendations will come up, but dear panelists, the same song be sung all the time. It is easy to take some funding and then hide behind some regulatory aspect and then spend the money. Thank you very much.
There are a lot of regulations, but if we don't advocate for the change of those regulations, the banks are also fairly, well, their hands are tied, more or less. I don't have enough time to go through this room. Sir, I only have 1 minute. 30 seconds. 30 seconds, sir, with respect, kindly, because we've got to move into the next aspect, please. 30 seconds, monsieur.
Thank you very much. My name is Alaji Jeng. I'm a Gambian, but the Secretary General and CEO of the West African Bankers Association. And I just assume that if I didn't comment on this, I will not be justice. My good friend said that the commercial banks are not supporting. But I can assure you that if you look at the numbers or if you look at the recent programming of commercial banks, you will find out that they have been on SME. But the interest rate we are crying over here, commercial banks are not determining the interest rate. Interest rates are determined by the government and based on the economy. Two, lending is not like if you look at the money runs by the commercial banks is owned by depositors funds. So you just cannot come without a proper business plan. You want you say you are an SME, you are an SME, so you need a loan, and the bank just close eye and give you. So there must be a procedure. Sometimes you ask the client, provide me a business plan, and it's a problem. So we have been in the region for the past 2-3 years doing the exercise. We found that even the business plan is a problem. So now, for us to go back to the drawing board, we need to come as a team, one, to try to develop a unit in the commercial banks through ebid-bidc support on that. Because if you look at the commercial banks, most of them don't have a unit of SME, and SME is so important that we need, I'm still advocating that we need units in every commercial bank, need a unit for SME, which they will go on training.
Sir, now 1.5 minutes. Okay, so he said something very pivotal, okay? Business plans. Can I, before we move on to you, sir, please, I need 2 people to raise their hands if they can help with creating business plans for SMEs and SMIs. 2 people to commit. Because when we come here this time, that's the essence of this deal room. 2 people say you are committing to helping. How many SMEs and how many SMIs in this room? How many of you have business plans? Many of you don't have business plans. Sir, please, what's your name? Alaji. Good Alaji. Alaji, we need you. No. In order for us to create the solutions before we leave here, we have to know where our help is coming from. So Alaji, you're going to help us with business plans.
Oh, yes.
Anybody in this room, Alaji, but after today, where can we find you?
No, I have said I am the Secretary General of the West African Bankers Association.
No problem, sir. Relax. Yeah. If you have to create business plans, etc., and you too, sir, you are also going to commit to help our SMEs and SMIs to create business plans. You too, sir. Okay. Those who have put your hands up, please put our helpers, put your hand up. Those who have committed to help the SMEs in this room to build the business plans that the commercial banks are looking for. Okay. After this session, I will ensure that collaboration is done because we want success stories out of this forum. We have one more recommendation. I think I had somebody there who had a recommendation. Yes, sir. Can you please kindly give the gentleman in the white. Sir, recommendations, please. And then I'll come to you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Leo from Benue State. But then again, just for sake of time, I'll probably just move fast. While we're all having this conversation, I just put this down, which is that for the bank and even the commercial banks, we need to begin to redefine what success means and what performance means. If you look at the numbers reeled out here earlier from all the banks and all the financial institutions, numbers or success for them was defined by how much was disbursed or how much was given out in terms of loans. But the question is, if we come back at the next if, one recommendation is that is it possible for EBID to say, you know what, across member countries, let's pick one SME working with the subnationals or the commercial banks in the country to say, we'll come back here next year and showcase 15 successful SMEs that we've taken from Greece, from ground zero to a success level. That is something we can be counting in terms of success. That is humans, real impact made.
Okay.
That can be an outcome of the EVE 2024. Say, across the member countries, 15 countries, we say each country give us one SME, we grow that SME from ground zero to a success level. This in addition, and this will help us as a bank understand the petty problems that happen at the level.
Okay.
The commercial bank guy talked about commercial banks. Commercial banks are not fair. It is good for us as an ECOWAS entity, where this bank represents us as a people, to have, say, because of EBID, have a regulation across whatever funding comes out of EBID to the commercial banks at that level. And I feel that the subnationals have a closer understanding of what their SMEs conditions are than the commercial banks. The commercial banks come here to represent themselves. We don't even sit in the rooms where the commercial bankers are talking. So it is good for the bank to understand clearly, like my colleague had earlier said, the pains of the guys at the grassroots. There's a couple of recommendations I have here, but for want of time, I probably won't be able to go through. But we need to look at harmonizing our regulations. Basically, that's one thing. Then capacity building. I like what you just did here, which is that let's come practical. Capacity building is scarce. We set these rules based on the skill set of people who have given these rules to us. Help us understand how the rules are played.
Yeah.
Some people go to Harvard here, some people go to the Ivy League college and understand how these things are. But you don't understand, you don't expect that the guy in a West African university to understand how these rules are played, because this money comes from those entities. So it's good for us to have a clear understanding of what the rules are. And that these rules don't have to be put like in a sacred book. Let these things be out there for people to understand. We're not that dull. If these things are out there, we'll be able to understand how these things pan out. But like I said, we need to start looking at performance in the terms of humans that we've changed, rather than the numbers that we dole out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother. Capacity building has also come up. So we've talked about business plan development. I think that is kind of packaged as well in capacity building. Earlier on, I had a colleague, a friend, well, my brother over there, who mentioned, where do we even find the information? So even teaching SMEs where they can find the information. And I believe, Benedicta, because you are a lawyer, I'm also going to charge you. You're going to help us to learn how to read the fine print. Benedicta, I've given you that job. All right. Yes, sir, please. Your recommendations, sir. Please, can you give the microphone to the gentleman in the front, please? Before we leave here today, I'm going to assign tasks.
Okay, je vous remercie.
I am Ramanu. I am a leader of a media in Benin. My recommendation is that EBID, in relation to this initiative, enters the debate to look at the constraints that restrict the development of SME and SMI, even in the commercial bank. This is a permanent debate. So there's need for a leadership to go deeper into the reforms in the financial and banking institutions, and looking at the credits that are logged sitting in these banks and at what rate can these funds be released to the SMEs. These are things that need to be worked on into details, because you need to fine-tune some political will to enable the banks and financial institutions that are in place. So there is something that is very important for the development of SMEs and SMIs, the creative industries and cultural industries. I'm calling the banks. I'm calling the bank that some years back, you had a cultural guarantee fund. And I think today we are moving towards funding of creative industry and entertainment industry. So EBID as a bank must go back, take up the lantern in the creation and the development that sector, and then create sports, media, in the region, so they can have sustainable development, because you cannot build development without supporting that sector. And I believe that EBID that took the initiative some years ago goes back to that field as a campaigner. Thank you.
One more ladies, you are not speaking at all. Where are my ladies? Yes, madam. I want two ladies to speak.
Bonsoir.
Good afternoon. Sorry, because I came in a bit late. I am Madame Doso Safiatou Traoré. I am a manager in charge of promotion of trade and investment in Afrexim Bank. The issue that I face myself as a promoter of investment, particularly in SMEs, that generally in Africa, we like working alone. We like doing things alone. We don't like working in group. In Africa, I cannot finance an SME that comes to me for an issue of $100,000. I cannot, because unfortunately, those in charge of transactions cannot deal with an issue of $100,000. Meanwhile, I have the same time to work on $100 million. So we need to pull our resources together so that we avoid everybody doing little things in their own corner. We need to create that value chain, and you set yourself in a group and you have a boomerang effect. I would like to talk about the cultural industry. In Afrexim Bank, we are moving from an experience that the African youth actually are involved in a cultural industry. You have actors, musicians, artists, and so on. But there are very few that live of that. So the Exim Bank create what we call the Nexus of Africa. So there is a fund, have $500 million dedicated to that. That is going to 1 million. So there hardly are SMEs that come around to benefit from that. So there are only those who come in a consortium and in group that come along to benefit from those funds. But someone cannot say, I have a movie, because Safia, you have a program, I have here that you have a fund. So the movie will cost me 50 million, so I need funding. No, we cannot do that. It's true that we need to make an effort, but the issue is that you need to come together. You've talked about EBID. We're going to work constantly with EBID, just like the way we've been doing, to actually understand better the challenges in West Africa to be able to serve you. But in any case, we have our stand there. We have exposed things. Well, the call, the appeal has been made. So please come together as a group.
Important conversation. I want to say a big thank you to this panel that drove the conversation. Joe Onyiuke, Esquire, a lawyer of over 2 decades, sharing his very successful palm oil business story. We had Simone Tebayema, secrétaire générale à l'Agence nationale de promotion et de garantie de financement des PME et PMI. We had Mr. Humphrey Oriakhi, who is a financial advisory and fundraising professional, and he's the managing director, CEO at PAC Capital Limited. And we had, last but not the least, Benedicta Lasi, Executive Chair, African Trade Center. Please, a round of applause for our panelists who have done a yeoman's job of bringing this wonderful conversation around solutions and recommendations, helping SMEs and SMIs to life. Thank you very much for driving this conversation.